no hoiro the kapua podi. Mi rātou e mau e te mahi o tō rātou wākaina. Mi rātou e mau a heri, mātou no kaina kore, mahi kore. I roto ngā whare, e wehi ana rātou ki te noho. Nei ra tino atu kia koe manaki tia, a kai mahi o tēnei kaupapa. A rātou, I puta mai o rātou ngā kau tēnei taonga ki nei ko te aroha. Te aroha ki te te atu. Nei rā tino atu kia koe ni tino a tapu tautami koe te mata kaupapura. Father, we come before you this day and we give you thanks and praise for a new day. Day that you have made, you ask us to be glad and to rejoice in it. You can only do that when we appreciate, respect, and love one another. Lift up our hearts with thanksgiving and prayer in terms of your blessings upon us. From those times, well before our time when our ancestors lived here, down through the generations and today. We can say indeed, Lord, that we live in the land of milk and honey when we look around the world. Lord, we ask you to put your hand of blessing upon those that are sorrowing today with the loss of family members, those who passed on long beyond the veil, that they might find their comfort in their solace in you. We pray for those that are sick and weary, whether it be in the hospital or in their homes, those that take care of them, the doctors, the nurses and the caregivers and the whānau. We ask you to be with those that are in prisons, Lord. Those that have no home to go to, live on the streets. Those that have less than us. Help us to be grateful always for what you have blessed us with. But Lord, most of all, we lift up this day to you, the theme of this gathering, that you might bless it with your presence by your Spirit. And that those that share will share from their hearts, not just their heads. And those that receive it will receive it likewise, in the Spirit that is given. So we just commit this day to you, each one here today. Those that wanted to be here, that couldn't be here. And at the end of the day, we would say, we give you all thanks, praise and the honour. In Jesus' name. Amen. Kira tātou nore te mia te kia koutu ko hara mai nai, te karo ki te kore. Mia te ki te whare tūne, whare wohora. Iru te moretanga e whare tapu tēnei, whare tūtu. And so we acknowledge each one here has come today in response to the call. We acknowledge the house that provides us this shelter today. House of God, house of hope, house of healing. And so we ask that we be a blessing to the house as well, by our presence here. Again, we just commit the whole conference to the leadership, and that their wisdom, their knowledge and experience of God, this conference, the skill to give you what you need. But sometimes the leaders need encouraging too, so that you might give back to them what they need. At the end of the day, we'll go home with our kids full, or ki ngā keti, o te mātauranga. So whatever you come to see today, hope you find it, take it home tonight. You got 3 days to look at it, kick it about and decide, no, I don't need this, throw it out. But those that you think that are there that are going to be a blessing to you, not only to you, those people around you, then you can start to use them in a way that will bring honour to your mana in the way that you bless others. So with those few words, e mi e no ke tata tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou katoa.
everybody. Thank you, Hui Kikahu, for that inspired blessing, karakia, and welcome to everybody. My name is Glenn Bradley, and I've recently been given the privilege of taking on the role as the chairperson for the WBoP DST, or the Western Bay of Plenty Disability Support Trust. And this is my first opportunity to engage and address a group in that role. So just want to say today, thank you all for coming along. We've got a fantastic program put together ably by our coordinator, Jill Gardner. We've got a very busy program. We've got a number of fantastic presenters, and our glue this morning to keep everything running on track and to keep you all entertained is going to be our MC, Jason Edgecombe. We like to think of Jason, well, we don't like to think of Jason as a combination of all the best and worst things of Mike Hoskin, Graham Norton, Jeremy Wells, and Richie McCaw. Take from that what you will. Jason will be leading us through the morning, and I will pass over now to Jason. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ben. I even know who some of those people are. We're doing good. Richie McCaw's a rugby player, right?
Helicopter pilot.
A helicopter pilot. What part of this inspires the connection to a former rugby player as a helicopter pilot? I don't know, but I appreciate the kind words nonetheless. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko na ego te mauna, ko Thames te awa, ko Dakar te waka, and ko Anglo-Saxon te iwi. Ko Jason Allen Edgecombe first, toko ingoa, no reira, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you everybody, and welcome to our Networking for Inclusion seminar, Visioning a Good Life. I've been visioning a good life this week. I've had a terrible week. I just found out that my older daughter is allergic to bee stings, and we found out the wrong way, so isn't that fun? But it's okay, just be in my happy place with a whole bunch of swords and a lot of sweaty, dirty men. That came out wrong. First and foremost of our wonderful lineup of speakers and presenters today is Jane Bawden, and hopefully I pronounced that correctly, who is the CEO of Parent to Parent New Zealand. If you don't know who Parent to Parent New Zealand is, a rock's probably not the best place to be living under, but that's okay. She's going to kick off talking about getting started, practical tips, and staying strong, and in the wonderful theme of our technology and our new changing world, she's going to do that for us via Zoom somehow. Presumably there. Oh, hello. Jane Bond, take it away.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou. I would much rather be joining you in the beautiful Bay of Plenty, but I will instead be back in Auckland traffic later on today. Thank you too for the karakia. I thought that concept of sharing from the heart as well as from the head was just encapsulates what we're talking about today, so thank you for that too. Now, Parent to Parent might actually be new to some of you. We have two of our regional coordinators there today on that are intending to come, Jane Ward and Brianna Turner. They could perhaps just give a wave so people know who they are if they want to catch up later on in the day. But we've been around for almost 40 years. We're throughout New Zealand supporting families with disabled family members of any age for all that time. And I have our contacts and outlined our services in a PowerPoint, which I'll pass on to Jill to share with you later. But today is all about vision creation and supporting ourselves and others to create and hold the vision for themselves of the future that they want. So how do we go about that, and how do we continue to stay strong when life's inevitable ups and downs come along? I've followed in the steps of two really inspirational parents, leading Parent to Parent, Shelley McDonald and Anne Wilkinson, and I'm also the mother of young man Hugh, this is Hugh here, and the opportunities that I've had to influence his life and to dream of and plan for a good life for him have very much come from presentations like this one from parents and from family organisations. And so I'm hugely grateful to all those parents who shared some really personal stories about themselves and their family members, and I have used consent to share some of his story with you today. So I guess the first question is, why would we do this? It can actually be a bit confronting to be asked to dream and hope when perhaps your experience of a disabling society has been limiting. You might have had to fight for information or resources or to achieve basic human rights for yourself or for your family member. But the thing is that life will continue to happen. And if the person you are supporting, or indeed your own family, is not in a position to dream and plan how you want life to unfold, then somebody else will be making decisions for your family member based on their own worldview. And that could be a completely well-meaning assumption that the disabled person will follow a particular path. For example, that they are better off in congregated settings, like a special school or day programs, traditional day programs, or perhaps participating in leisure activities that are only for disabled people. And people might make those assumptions because that is the worldview that they grew up with and is in fact all they know. So I'm going to start with a story about my own worldview and what has influenced that. When I was at primary school in central Auckland in the 70s, a couple of doors up the road from where I lived was a mum with 3 teenage or adult children. They seemed like adults to me at the time. One of whom was a young man with a learning disability. I think he was non-verbal. He would be taken off each day in a white van to a shelter workshop. And one year I returned to Treakins Primary School after the summer holidays to find that the old primrose block had been demolished, and in its place was a new building with a really high fence and children playing behind the fence. That was the council school for cerebral palsy. And so my worldview was that disabled people could continue to live with their family, and remember this was in the days before deinstitutionalisation, so that mum parenting on her own was exceptional. I would so like to be able to talk to her now and understand how she was able to make some very different decisions and hold a very different vision for her family. And also that disabled children could at least go to school alongside a mainstream school. That must have been a very early example of satellite schooling. But others of my age didn't even have those experiences, and so there are many people in senior roles in society today who have had no day-to-day contact with disabled people in their lives. So whose worldview do you want to influence the life of the person that you support? That's my why. So for me, what really influenced our worldview for our son, as we started to parent him, was family organisations like Parent to Parent and others, where I could hear the stories from my peers of what could be achieved. I knew what I wanted for my son, and I'll talk a bit about how he's been able to express his own dreams and goals, but it did seem overwhelming, and I wanted a good life for him. What did that look like, and how would we go about it? It does help that Hugh is a twin, so his twin sister, I could follow what she wanted and what our hopes and dreams were for her at their different stages of development and what we expected for her. I really like this description from CREW, that's an Australian disability organisation called the Community Resource Centre. They say this about the whole concept of a good life. When thinking about what makes a good life for people with disability, one only needs to think about what would make a good life for all people. While the details of this have been debated for thousands of years, there is some consensus about what makes a good life. Having a home of one's own, having a job or a way of making a contribution, and having opportunities for learning, growth and development that challenge and stretch us. Finding hope and having purpose are important to people, and experiencing all of this in the midst of a rich web of relationships where one belongs are at the heart of what most would agree makes for a good life. So that's clear there how easy. Now I just have to make that happen. So my starting point was my understanding of what I considered to be my son's rights, and alongside some bottom lines for developing some things that I wouldn't accept for him. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it to you, because I've really appreciated it when parents have been very honest, talking about the challenges that this work represented. I have had to fight for resources. I have had to follow through on Official Information Act requests. I have become very, very unpopular. I was described as I won't say what was it. I was described as being like a dog with a bone. This was another who will not let go. I tried things that didn't work. I lost hope at times and then had to pull the energy back together again. But all along, my safe space was family organisations and other families, sharing a space with other people who got what it was we were trying to do. And the opportunity that I had to attend family courses with organisations like SAMS, Imagine Better, Belonging Matters in Australia, and as well as Parent to Parent, were absolutely pivotal in keeping me on the path. So there's my first tip, is find your tribe. Now it's time to introduce Hugh to you. He's 22, he lives at home with my husband and me, and in fact, after 5 years away at university, my daughter is literally driving now on the way between Taupo and Auckland and coming back to live with us again. He did the next phase of her life. Hugh went to our local high school. He really loves nature, the redwood forests and Rotorua, the sea, sailing. Physical fitness is really important to him. He goes to our local Jets gym regularly. And he understands that many children live in poverty in New Zealand and do not always have lunch. He understands that the deliveries of school lunches that he does for the HIP social enterprise Eat My Lunch several days a week mean that on those days, when the kids see him carrying the lunch boxes through the school gates into the office, they know they'll be getting a lunch that day, and I know that their parents will know that their child had a lunch that day. It's super important to him to connect with other people, and that they know that he needs time to organise himself, to wave or shake hands, or to look at the other person and see their smile. He is really pleased at his mother's abject failure to consistently follow the many therapy programs and recommendations that were received over the years, and instead spend much of that time at local cafes. Has meant that he now has a regular route of cafes to get coffee grounds from and deliver them to his local community garden where he works, all based very close to our home and the community he grew up in. And one of those cafes gave him his first paid job as a teenager, sweeping up leaves in the Himbo courtyard in Auckland. He hated doing this in the rain, and he found it overwhelming, but he persevered, and he totally understood the value of the handwritten pay slip that the cafe owner wrote up for him, and of the coins that he received and took straight into the dairy. He is known and respected, and liked and involved. So there's my second tip. When all else fails, stop and just go and have a coffee at the local cafe, because you just don't know where that's going to go. But this is not an end to the cure for us, and none of it happened overnight. So here are some tips and tricks that will hopefully make things a little bit easier for you. We've been running a series of workshops by Parents Local closer to you. So the workshop is called Mane Kura Wahine Toa, Wonder Woman, and it includes a visioning aspect, so creation of a positive vision using the vision board technique. So that's one technique, and I've noticed some others there. As you got a little bit older, I started to learn again from family organisation workshops about the disability sector, about how government worked, about government strategies, disability strategies. I learned a bit about human rights, the United Nations Convention, and things like the right to attend mainstream school, and what inclusion should look like. I also learned about the many abuses that had occurred in state care, and we're hearing those stories now, aren't we, from the inquiry that's running in New Zealand at present. And I've learned about families being separated and the impact of the disabling society on family resilience and economic stability. So some of the stuff was pretty dark, and I'm not going to lie, it certainly still sometimes gives me the heebie-jeebies in the middle of the night. but it also motivates me to do things differently for my son and to safeguard his good life. So here's my third tip. I know I've got a number of thinkers who talk generally about the power of our minds. And one of my recent light bulb moments was reflecting that if I read a scary book, none of that is actually happening to them. So I'm creating those emotions and I have a choice about that. And so if I have a choice and my mind turns to my concerns about what might happen to my small non-verbal passive son, I can instead choose to hold in my mind the vision that I'm creating for his life. That's my choice and it's in my control. So tip 3, at the very least, this visionary planning is a way of protecting me from the effects of my mind going to the potential negative outcomes in my son's life. We have a choice where our thoughts go. And I don't know what this Richie McCaw theme is today, but I've also got a story about Richie McCaw. So he's got a visionary story, which I think included in his work biography, but apparently he told, talking to his uncle as a child, when he was a child, about wanting to be an All Black. And his uncle said to him, if you want to be an All Black, you should want to be a great All Black. And so apparently Richie wrote on a piece of paper, greatest All Black of all time, and self-taped it to the inside of his wardrobe drawer. And that bit of paper was found when the family sold the family farm a number of years ago now. So when I was being overwhelmed in those school transition years, being told that we wouldn't get the funding for a supported individualised life for Hugh, or being presented with a list of problems by really well-meaning people in response to my ideas, I held a picture in my mind, and that picture was of Hugh raising his head to look happily at a support worker coming into our house in the morning and taking him by the arm and pulling him out the gate to get on with his day with a big smile on his face. And that little picture to me was Hugh knew and liked the people supporting him, he understood what was going to be happening in the day, and it was something that he wanted to be doing. And that is indeed what happens today in Hugh's life. And that level of happiness and engagement has meant that Hugh's maturity and personal growth has just continued to develop. It's wonderful to see. So that's my third tip. You can kick off a vision by just holding a picture in your mind or by scribbling something on a piece of paper. But what we are doing then is forming an intention, and it's incredibly powerful. So some other ideas I've got on the slide there. I think it depends what you respond to personally. But I like a visual representation and kind of a model to work through. So I still use some of those models to try and take an objective view of Hugh's life and how it's going on that. So this is a path plan. I suspect a number of you know about this, but just very quickly, it stands for Planning Alternative Tomorrow's Hope, and it was a planning model designed specifically for working with disabled people. The idea is a group of people that care about the person come together with the family and capture the disabled person cause and capture a sense of who that person is. Here's one who is John. And based on their interests and what we know about the person, creating a really broad vision, moving to the left across that plan, and then we capture what's happening, what's in the life right now of the person, who we could be getting involved to help move through the ideas, what we need to do to get strength at staying strong, be it fit, and finishing out with first steps, small things that can happen right now, and the head of the arrow, I think this one is called bold steps, and those are the long-term steps. So the beauty is in the drawings, capturing the conversation as it occurs and having an actual plan of what can happen and how we can go about it. So we did a path plan in our children about 7 years old, and our son honestly couldn't spend more than a nanosecond in one place at a time, and we had very few communication strategies available to us. He was also typically awake from 3 AM to 6 AM, and at this stage my husband was away from home working for a chunk of each week, and my son had full-on immunity issues and was often very unwell for weeks at a time. So these were dark times. This was not an easy patch in my life. But I had just been to a weekend of family development run by the amazing Laura Sullivan, such a friend of disabled people and families, who is co-director of Mark. And as part of that, a part plan was offered as a follow-up, and I just thought, why not? Our facilitator was Sue Robertson, and I just can't speak highly enough of her facilitation skills. She works with an organisation, Family Network New Zealand, and is available to do part plans. This was a little different, this process. It wasn't what was kind of proposed, because our daughter was a great self-advocate, and there was no way that her future was going to be done in any planning process. And so on the spot, we turned this into a vision building session for our whole family. And here's the amazing thing, that even though the plan included those small things like my daughter wanted to change from doing jazz ballet to basketball right to school, and big things like me wanted to do Outward Bound, and that meant being away from the family for 8 days. I hadn't done anything near that, and going back to university and doing a master's. And my husband wanting a complete career change. I mean, this is big stuff, isn't it? All of these things were recorded on the plan in this same format, and every single one of them happened. And the even more amazing thing was that when the paper went up on the wall and the drawing started happening, our son got up off the couch and went and stood right by the plan and ran his hand over the plan, and it was just so obvious to us that he was saying, this is about me, and he was deeply engaged with it, and so we seeded some concept of a positive future for him. And I saw a post the other day on Facebook, which the mum is happy for me to share. She was reposting from 6 years ago a picture of her son's health plan, and the plan included the vision that he would have his own home. And she said she just had no idea at all about how that would happen, but sure enough, 6 years later, he is moving into a home in their local community, into a house in the local community, with other families that she knows. So they've chosen the house, the families have chosen each other, they've chosen the provider of the support staff, and it is family governed. And what a difference that is, what a contrast, isn't it, to a family whose family member tips into residential services in a crisis situation.
Can you hear me, Jane?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you there. That does sound amazing, but unfortunately we've run out of time for you.
Okay.
My heart was beating a little bit when I looked at your slides and saw 5 of 26.
No, these last few, I'll just while we're wrapping up, this is as far as I was going. And as I'll distribute them, and I'm going to leave you some words from the wonderful Stan Walker about having a bigger vision for life. But I think you've got the nutshell there.
So did you say that you'd make the PowerPoint available for us?
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Thank you very much for that. I have definitely enjoyed your presentation. We had other people to enjoy as well. So thank you very much for
my pleasure.
Taking the time.
Good day, everybody.
You too. Thank you. Next up, we have Garth Benny, who is the CEO of an acronym which I assume stands for New Zealand Disability Support Network. Yep. Fired today. Who's going to talk to us about the workforce developing projects ensuring visioning a good life. I'm not going to read the rest. I assume you'll go over it. It'll be very interesting.
Yeah, fairly quickly by the sound of it.
Well, give 20 minutes. Come on.
And Tato, thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here. I'll get moving. So what I want to talk to you about today is some of the activities that New Zealand Disability Support Network has been involved in developing the workforce. If we are indeed going to enable good lives, we do need a workforce to support that effort. For those of you who don't know, the New Zealand Disability Support Network is the national umbrella organisation for disability support providers in New Zealand. We have about 180 members who collectively employ almost 30,000 people across the country, providing disability support services every day. So I'm going to run through some of the... Is this still working? Yeah? So I'm just going to run quickly through some of the initiatives that we have on the go in that workforce development space. And the first one up is a new diploma qualification in employment support, which was just launched recently, open for enrolments. One of the things I was going to be doing here this morning was to promote the diploma and encourage more enrolments, but I got an email just before we got underway today to say that we're full with our initial cohort. So, however, please continue to express your interest. We just want to run before we can walk, and the reason for that is that we have employed a number of learning support facilitators, and we just want to get a sense and a feel for how much support the initial cohort of students need, so we can tell how quickly we can expand the number of students in the program and what kind of resourcing we'll need to do that going forward. Now, the qualification has been developed over the last 12 months and has involved people right across the sector. It's involved providers, it's involved the funders, the Ministry of Social Development. We've done it in partnership with Career Force, which is the industry training organisation for this part of the sector. We've included disabled people's organisations, people who've used services, families whose sons and daughters have used services, and together we have put together a curriculum that has been drawn from the best evidence in New Zealand and internationally. So we built a curriculum that covers the core competencies, values and skills that are needed to create great employment outcomes for disabled people. And that's the focus of that qualification. It's a blend of self-directed learning, online learning, and active support from learning facilitators. We have great aspirations for this qualification in terms of creating better outcomes for disabled people. Disabled people's employment rate is less than half what it is for the non-disabled population, and we desperately and urgently need to do something about that, and this qualification will play a part in that. Now, I'm going to hang around after lunch. If people want to find out more about the program and how to enrol, please come and see me. One of the other initiatives we've got underway is funded jointly by the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Social Development, but accidentally, jointly, not intentionally. It just was the way it worked out. We had to play the role of joining the dots together with the two funders. So this is an initiative aimed at supporting organisations, provider organisations, on their service transformation journey to embed enabling good life principles in practice. And that is an extended workshop program. It covers it takes nearly 6 months to go through, and it's based on a couple of assumptions. One is that we need to focus, in terms of organisational change, we need to focus our efforts first and foremost on the leadership in those organisations, taking responsibility for leading the changes that are necessary to embed enabling good life principles in practice. It's also based on the assumption that organisations would benefit greatly from being on that journey together as a collection, as a collaboration of organisations. Everyone is at a different point in that journey, and so the program is an opportunity for organisations to learn from each other and find ways in which, as part of that journey, they can collaborate better in their communities. So we've got about 30 organisations involved in the program so far. 9 of those are in Mid-Central, where the Mana Whai Kaha prototype is underway, has been for a while. And that's a slightly more extended program reflecting that prototype environment, and that's funded by the Ministry of Health. And we have 4 other projects funded by MSD in various parts of the country. So we have a collaboration of agencies in Auckland, in Napier, in Nelson, and in Christchurch, who are also collectively embarking on this journey. The Ministry of Health is keen to roll the program out more extensively, and we've said stop, wait. I mean, while we have quite confidence that it's going to be a really good program, we think we should just run with a few projects first, evaluate them, tweak them, incorporate the feedback, and then we'll be able to say to the ministry, right, we're now really confident, let's go. This is all about making the changes that are necessary for organisations to truly and authentically practice according to those enabling good lives principles. For some organisations and the projects, it might require the odd tweak of what they're doing here and there, but for many it will require quite profound change, and that's quite challenging. Another project that we are hosting and running in partnership with Imagine Better is to support a significant policy change that was announced as part of the budget earlier this year. NZDSN has been lobbying for, as long as I can remember, and that's quite a while, the idea that employment support agencies should be able to get actively involved with young disabled people well before they leave school. And this project is a reflection of that policy change. The Ministry of Social Development wanted to pilot the concept before it rolled it out nationally, and so we've been asked to undertake a series of workshops in 5 pilot locations with identified employment support agencies. And the intent of the workshops is to bring together all the key stakeholders, employment providers, the schools, families and the young people themselves, to look at how in those communities they could work together collectively, organise themselves, again with a focus on creating employment outcomes for people when they leave school. The project involves the partnering of employment support agencies and schools in creating really important stepping stones to employment that most non-disabled people take for granted, but which aren't usually available for young disabled people. After school jobs, weekend jobs, holiday jobs, internships, active work experience, job exploration, maybe even access to the careers advisor at school. Wouldn't that be amazing?
That's too far.
Going a step too far, do you think? Well, they are concerned about us encroaching on their professional territory. So when you hear phrases like that, we know we've got to get all these key players together so that they understand each other, get on the same page in terms of the vision that we have, and the idea that all disabled people should have a shot at a job, and not just after they've left school, before they left school. So those pilot projects that we're partnering with Imagine Better around are located in Auckland, in Hamilton, Wellington, Christchurch and Auckland. They run for 18 months with a view to then rolling out that nationally. So that'll be something to look forward to. I'm good? Right, I'll carry on. Workforce development is also one of 2 priority areas that we are in the process of developing a joint work program with the Ministry of Health, with the Disability Support Services within the Ministry of Health. That joint work program is a result of some very serious concerns that we raised with the Director General of Health earlier this year about the leadership and performance of disability support and how it needed to kind of get its act together a bit more. The Director General listened to what we were saying and has directed DSS to work with NZDSN to develop a joint work program on a couple of agreed priority areas, and one of those areas is workforce development. At the moment it's a fairly chaotic space. You've got a number of different organisations, including ourselves I have to say, who are scattering workforce development resources across the provider landscape like it was confetti, randomly, like a lottery. Sometimes it sticks, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the quality is good, sometimes it's not so good. And so we are asking for a coherent nationwide workforce development program We are also very keen that that program focus on qualification pathways. There are qualifications available to the sector, but the quality and content varies hugely. The resourcing for them varies hugely, depending on whether it's in the industry training model, whether it's with a tertiary provider. And we want to bring some coherence to that. We want to embed the enabling good lives principles in the curriculum. We want to see a curriculum in some cases, because in some cases it's hard to find evidence of a curriculum, so you kind of wonder what's being taught. So there's huge variability with those qualifications, and not just for frontline roles, but also for more specialist roles, which is why we're putting so much effort into the employment support diploma. But there's also room for other qualifications for those specialist roles, so that we have national practice frameworks for people in those roles right across the country. One of those is behaviour support, positive behaviour support, and another one is the connector or tohuna role associated with the demonstration sites and other areas in the country which have access to navigators or local area coordination. The other reason we want to develop that framework and that coherent workforce development strategy is we think it's high time that disabled people and family members were integral to its delivery. So we need to create an environment where we can support a lot more disabled people and a lot more family members into formal workforce development roles as trainers and developers of curriculum. So, how much time have I got left? Because I've got more to say.
Graciously give you 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
The amount of time that you actually have left.
Okay, I'm just going to digress slightly. Given its immediate post-election, one of the things organisations like ours do is prepare a briefing for incoming ministers, otherwise known as there's hundreds, ministers receive hundreds of them, so you've got to put a little bit of effort into it if yours is going to get any attention. Some BIMs are about 100 pages long, ours will be no more than 10 pages, and I'm trying to get it down to 8. We've identified 5 key priorities that we are very keen that incoming ministers, we don't know exactly who they're going to be yet, we hope there's a bit of continuity, but you never know. 5 key priorities. One of those is workforce development, which I've just outlined in some detail. Another one is a commissioning approach that enables sustainable funding, flexible funding, and commissions or contracts for outcomes. And that's what we need to support the implementation of enabling good lives, not just in 3 demonstration sites, but right across the country. The third thing that we want to bring to ministers' attention is the need to develop a social and long-term, to develop a social insurance approach to the funding of disability support. In other words, an expansion of the ACC concept to cover all disability, no matter what the cause. At the moment, we have a 2-tier system that actively discriminates on the basis of what causes your disability. Okay? And there's a whole lot of boundary issues as people are shifted, costs are shifted from the ACC system to the health system. We want to see that change. There is mounting consensus across the disability for something like this, and we know it's on the agenda of the discussions that are taking place right now between the Greens and Labour. So we want to highlight that there is an appetite for that kind of big, bold change. We want to see the creation of a Disability Commission to advance that work, to work with key people in the sector, to ensure that governance is held by disabled people and families, and that things like the Enabling Good Lives principles provide the overarching framework in terms of how that should proceed. We cannot carry on having a funding system that is just funded by direct taxation. It's important to remember, for example, that in the last 2 years, over half of the payouts that ACC made came from the revenue generated by their sovereign wealth fund, not from the taxpayer. Now, we need that kind of investment right across the disability sector. We want to be able to have a situation where we can take an investment approach and a whole-of-life approach in terms of supporting individuals and their families. The other piece that we are promoting in our briefing to incoming ministers is the work that has already got underway. So nothing wrong with using a briefing to incoming ministers to congratulate government on introducing or planning to introduce in its next term accessibility legislation. That's really, really important. If we want to see enabling good lives happen, it's not just about the disability system, it's about accessible housing, it's about accessible jobs, transport, and all the rest of it. There's also a direct relationship between what we're saying about a social insurance approach to funding that doesn't discriminate on the basis of a cause of disability and the access legislation, because under that legislation it will be possible, if needed, to progress legal remedies to that discrimination across the system. So class action suits that look at how disabled people are discriminated depending on what causes they're discriminated against based on what causes their disability. So those are the 5 things that we are advancing with the government over the next couple of weeks, as soon as we see who the ministers are. And depending on who they are, we might offer a bit more detail and a bit more background. But that's where our focus is at the moment. So I just thought I'd slip that in there. And I'm getting the eye here, so it's time to wrap up. Thanks very much for your time.
That's much appreciated, Garth. That 2-tier system, that really gets me. I found that frustrating, 4 years ago when I found out about it. And unbearably frustrating about 4 months ago when WINS decided that I didn't deserve to be on job seeker with medical determining, the supported living is impossible to get, because I had a partner. And obviously, because she earned too much money, me and my 2 kids with my disability didn't deserve anything. But then when she broke her ankle, ACT's paying her wages, all of her medical care, surgery, she's getting psychologists, things. It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. Anyway, it's good to hear that that is getting in front of government and maybe we're going to get some change out of that. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Following Garth's presentation, we have Tanya Wilson, who is the CEO of Mementa Charitable Trust, who's going to talk to us about social role valorization, which I'm very intrigued to know what that is about. So come on up, Tanya.
Tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Tanya Wilson and I'm from Mementa Charitable Trust. Most people in the room are probably more familiar with us from our former name, which was Avalon, and we've been here in Bay for 4 years. So we were one of those organisations that Garth was just talking about 5 years ago that undertook significant transformation. So we were a segregated day service that was based out at Gill Lane, and then over the past 5 years we've changed and transformed our organisation to be what it is today. And at that time when we changed, when we started undertaking the transformation in 2014, the principles of enabling good lives were fundamental to that transformation. And we had the pleasure of meeting John Armstrong, who's a senior trainer in social valorisation, who introduced us to what this framework is. And it actually sits really nicely along EGR and its principles, so that became sort of the framework of what we do. So Mementa works in 3 ways. So we have our programs where we work with people who have a lived experience of disability, helping connect them to opportunities to live their good life. We also work in the transition space, helping young people with that leap from school to adulthood, which can be a little bit daunting. We've also recently moved into the social change space, which is around working across community to challenge some of those systems that entrenched evaluation in the first place. And we've also just recently incorporated our business arm, so we're moving into a social enterprise space, which is around about us having more autonomy as an organisation to be able to fund our programs and our social change. but I'm here to talk to you about social role valorisation. So, can I just have a show of hands? We are going to have a bit of audience participation here. I've got the very audacious task of trying to take a 2-day workshop into 15 or so minutes, so we'll move swiftly through it. So there will be a little bit more audience participation, so if you've got some paper at the ready or just your brains to engage, would be great. But just from my point of reference, who in the room has heard of social role valorisation or SRV? Well, there's a few of you, and those that have heard of it, who have been to an SRV training event. Okay, a little less of you. But I will say that there are a couple of people in this room who are far more expert in the area of SRV than I am. So I'm not standing here purporting to be an expert by any stretch. So any errors or inaccuracies are mine in SRV. But as I said, when we met John Armstrong in 2014, he comes from Melbourne, 30 plus years of experience in social role valorisation. What we saw we loved, and it really made sense to us as an organisation. And it's fundamental to what we do. All of our team are trained in SRV, from our admin through to our frontline community connectors. So, I guess, what is SRV? So, SRV, what it is and what it helps you achieve, it develops and increases a person's skills and competencies. It helps you pay attention to the image of the person and those also that work alongside the person. And it helps take part and contribute into the community through social valued roles. And it's valued roles that we're actually going to talk to you about today, which is the main tenet of what social role valorisation is. So SRV is an empirical framework that helps us understand why certain people in our community are devalued, and it also tells us the best ways to shift the devalued status of a person, and we do that through these 3 ways. So, as I said, it's difficult to condense this down into such a brief time, but we'll focus around the ways that roles are created in order to achieve the good things of life. Thank you. So, I guess, why would you be interested in learning about SRV? So, it can be helpful to understand that SRV, social role valorisation, if you're involved in a life with someone who is marginalised or who is vulnerable to living on the margins of society. And that might be through impairment, through health issues, through older age, being homeless, being refugee, etc. So these are some people who have some characteristics that leave them vulnerable to being stereotyped or excluded. They might also find it much harder to get employment, to get a good education or healthcare or housing. So SRV also helps us be aware of how society operates or how human beings act in ways that lead to the marginalisation of individuals. So understanding the impacts of social devaluation is key to understanding the theory of SRV. But the key point of SRV is the more roles a person has and the more valued those roles are, the more likely the person is to experience the good things of life. So I guess, why are roles so important? So there's evidential connection that about the roles that you have and the life that you end up going to lead. So if you don't get the roles, you don't usually get the life. If you have limited access to roles, or the roles that you have are more devalued, you're less likely to have access to the good things of life. And you also can't valorise, which is to enhance. You can't enhance a role until you know what it is. So an easy way to do that is through a role inventory. So this is going to be our kind of first audience participation exercise. So if you've got a bit of paper, get that at the ready, or otherwise just use your thinking in this, or you might want to help the person beside you. So I'm just going to click through a couple here. So I want you to think about the roles that you have in your own life. So I'm going to start first. Well, what are your relationship roles? What are the roles that you have and the people that you have in your life? That be a friend, that be a family member. And then what are some of the roles that you perform every day? So some examples are you might be a parent, you might be a pet owner, you might be a driver, you might be a public transport user. What are some of those roles that you perform every day? Then what are some of the roles you have at work, or if you don't work, or if you volunteer, or if you're at school, what are some of those roles that you have? So that might be, I'm a team member, I might be an employee, a manager, a supervisor. Then what are you passionate about? What are your hobbies? What are your interests? Sports, arts? And lastly, what are your civic or community roles? So I sit here in Bethlehem Baptist today, so a church member might be one. That's obviously a very brief, quick time to do it, but if we had time, we'd delve into that exercise a little deeper, but we would also look at the past roles that you've had, that you may not hold anymore due to change of roles or change of life. We would also explore any devalued roles that a person might hold. So for instance, some devalued roles are people are employed, they might be homeless, they might be perceived as a burden or an eternal child, etc. And when you think and reflect on your own list that you have there, what you may notice is that your list may be a lot bigger than some of the people that we've talked about that are perceived as being devalued. In fact, some of our lists might be so big, we might be so time poor that we want to get rid of some of those roles because we're just too busy. So we're so role rich that we just want to put some of those down. And I guess what we see in the work that we do and the people that we work alongside, they're often very role poor and very time rich. That's why it can be really easy to fall into that space where you end up looking at occupying people's time rather than working with them to help them acquire valued roles, which will then in turn lead to a more valued and ordinary rich role in life. So talking about the good things of life. So what are the good things of life? Jane talked a little bit about that before when she spoke. So I guess there's a little bit of distinction around the good things of life rather than the good life. Because in Western culture, the good life has really grown, I think, to encapsulate a more materialistic view of life. So living in a particular house, driving a particular car, acquiring more material possessions. Where the good things of life encompass a richness that everybody has, and that's translated across culture. So things such as belonging, wanting to be loved, contributing, growing and learning, having a positive sense of identity and having connection. So everyone seeks these things because they are what most meets our needs. Most of these things are free and you can't purchase them, but they are given to you from others, they are reciprocal. So in order for you to receive sort of the good things of life, there has to be an exchange. And so in order to have that exchange, you have to be perceived as being worthwhile having the exchange. So I will decide if you're going to be my friend or if I'm going to employ you. So there's an exchange of value when you're perceiving someone's access to be able to have those good life roles. So second participation activity. I want you just to take a few minutes, just a couple of minutes, to write down and think about what are the top 5 things that constitute a good life of value for you. Does everyone have their 5? Oh, we'd better push on. So this slide lists some, but not all, of what is commonly considered the good things of life by most people. And if you're valued, this looks like a pretty ordinary list, and there'll be lots of things on here that you'll take for granted. But I want you to go back to your top 5, and I want you to look at the top one that you've written, the most important thing to you, and I want you to cross that off. Cross it off your list. That has been taken away from you, you no longer have that top good thing in your life anymore. So I guess how does that feel? That top thing that was most important to you, you don't have that in your life anymore. What does that mean to you? And I I guess you might not feel that that's ideal, but you're looking at your 4 others and you're going, well, yeah, those other 4 are pretty okay. And you might also have social networks, friends, family, and employment that might cushion that blow for you for losing that one. But if I ask you to scratch off 2 more off your list, take the next 2 off, and all you left is 2 more, how does that feel to you then? What does life look like for you then when the 3 top things that you value as a good life for you are no longer there? So now I ask you to cross off 1 more. So you're left with only 1 good thing of your top 5 that represents a good life of value for you. And how that feels. And often the people that we work alongside who are devalued, that is often all that they have. And then they also don't have the same cushioning effect that you do when you're valued to help lessen the impact on the other aspects of their life. So I guess 3 important things to remember is you can't wish a good life for somebody else, they have to want it for themselves. If you're working along someone to help them achieve their good life, that's a difficult job to do if you're not living one yourself. And also to remember that acquiring valued roles for some people can take time. It's not always easy because life is not always easy. So I guess just to finish off how working with SRV can help someone achieve their life of value, and this is how we work at my mentor and when we're working with people. So it starts with aspirations and interests of each person. So Jane was talking about that, and it's that visioning a good life. That's the most critical thing you will do, is getting to understand and know someone and help develop a vision. And sometimes you might be the only person that's holding that vision for the person. Ensuring that people have been provided with sufficient information to be able to make that decision. We often know that some of the people we work with are really have a poverty of experience. They might not have had a lot of life skills to be able to determine what a good life of value looks for them. So it's around helping people grow their skills and capability and offering them an opportunity to experience life so that they can make informed decisions. The third is what we definitely are about this in the way we work, is how you can be critical and intentional about how you help people reach their aspirations. That's having a really detailed plan in place. And you can't plan with someone unless you know them. The fourth is identifying and attempting to overcome some of the negative impacts and stereotypes that we know that people we work alongside face every single day. And it's responding to the person's most pressing needs. We know if someone that we're working with wants to have a job, they want to be an employee, that's the role they're seeking, that might be their most important role, but they might be homeless, so their most pressing need is actually getting a house. So let's work with the most pressing need first. And I guess the sixth one is, and something that we do really strongly, is helping people create roles through networks and opportunities within the community. So it's not about time filling, it's about acquiring meaningful value roles so that people are able to achieve their good life. So, I have to hop off stage now, so it's a very brief introduction to SRV. There are many more opportunities to learn about it. My mentor brings Dawn Armstrong from Australia a couple of times a year. So we've been in contact with Jill and also with Imagine Better. We sponsored to bring John out, so if people want to undertake any of John's SRV training. Alternatively, there are some of us here in the Bay of Plenty that have had some detailed training, and we're happy to sit alongside your organisations if you want to find out more. So I'm happy to speak to anyone afterwards, or alternatively, I'll give a couple of links for Jill to send out. So thank you.
Bottom line, never take the MC's master sheet, because then he has no idea what he's supposed to do. What struck me most for that Tanya, was when you said about those roles being taken away. And that's certainly a lot of what we see, and a lot of what everybody has seen in the last year, haven't we, with COVID, and a lot of people have lost their jobs, and suddenly an experience that is very real for a good quarter of our population became real for the whole thing. I think it's created a lot of empathy from people. I know I've had a year of being reminded of how important it is of how much it can matter when things that are important to you get taken away or threaten to be taken away. 2021 is going to be good. We're going to have a good year next year. I'm sure it is. Power of positive thinking. Next, we have the amazing Wendy Nielsen, who many of you will know, either from the amazing work that she does just in general, or from being on the trust board and being our chairperson for the last so long, I can't even remember when she wasn't. Today, we're going to get the opportunity to hear her personal story and what she has been through in order to get to be here and be so inspiring. So Wendy, please, share with us.
It gets pretty scary, Jason.
That's right, we had Jane before talking about feeling the emotions and the scary things. So we're going to be good.
Hi everyone, now I've got a PowerPoint there. It's interesting when I listen to that presentation from Tanya for social role valorisation. I realise I have had lots of roles in my life, and anyway, I'm going to share some of that with you. Okay, I first did this presentation in New York, actually, at a university, and it was a presentation for music for exceptional children. And my friend actually was sharing about how music helps people with lots of challenges, and she was working with that, and it was absolutely inspired. So, and I just shared a little bit about my life right now. When I go click, can you click that for me?
Of course I can.
Awesome, now let's click now. Okay, disability fact. There are 500 million disabled people in the world today. Now, that's a very huge number. We are a very big minority which is not recognised. And in Tauranga, we have 27% of the population is people with disability. And a lot of those disabilities are disabilities that you can't see as ones that you can see. So we're, people that have got disabilities that, such as language or reading or something like that, create as many barriers. So people with disability should have the same opportunity to go and live a fulfilling life. And that was very much what Tanya was sharing just now, how important it is to have a fulfilling life, to get a fair and equal education, and to become employed or perhaps take part in volunteering or anything like that. It's really important. So throughout the world, attitudes are still the biggest barriers for people with disability all over the world. Wherever I go, that is always the issue. Quite sobering, isn't it? You're doing very well. Oh, that's right. So attitudes are influenced by how others see those with disability. So there's that negative perspective that I grew up with as a child. You know, the medical, oh, you poor thing, you need to, you're sick and need fixing. It's not like that. Charity, institutional, no privacy. What do they want? Or lay, childlike, or rejected. If a child is born with a disability, do you give the parents congratulations card, or do you give them a sympathy card, or do you just don't bother? You know, the interesting issues there. I come from a positive thinking, and it's taken me quite a few years to get strong in that. And that's the right way. It's very empowering, and it should be the dominant way people see people with disability, because we certainly add a lot to the world. Right, I'm going to tell you just a little bit about my own disability. And it's called arthrogryposis multiplex congenital. So as a newborn, I had 3 contracted joints and 2 different body parts. Okay, we have a national organisation, and I'm going on a 10 kilometre bike ride on my trike at the end of the month, and we're raising funds. People don't know a lot about this disability. Yes, so that's enough. So, perhaps I'll just go like this. I'll go show you. So this the cartoon says, nice to see her to go out with a guy I don't have to worry about. After all, he is in a wheelchair. Look at the look on the guy's face. Yes, people with disability, just like everyone else, or something. Okay, not so. Okay. Right. So, oops. That's, thank you. I was born up the coast, and there might be somebody else who was born there. I'll tell you were born there because it's a good place. When the doctor saw me, he says to my parents, what can you do with that? And they wanted to send me up to Auckland to be put into a home, okay? And my hands and feet all sort of curled and very severe cut feet, desiccated hip and all sorts of things. But my parents said, no, we wanted this child, and they would not allow that to happen. My dad was an accountant, my mum was a housewife, and I know she very much devoted time and energy to bringing me up. I was always encouraged to give everything a go. I've been very independent and determined over my life. People who know me well go, oh yes, off you go, Wendy. Okay, right. So there's some interesting pictures there. You can see myself in the middle picture there, it was my grandmother and mum trying to walk. You can see plasters over on the top right over there. I was in a frog plaster for 18 months trying to straighten out my hips, okay? And you can see plasters there on my feet, and that's with my dad. It was a very loving family that I grew up in. Yeah, oh, good, wow. You're learning.
Can I just say, this is an adorable photo. Such a cute young lady there, with Granny and Mummy.
But that's what it's all about. And my parents didn't have any of the sports that are around today. I know that they got a lot of help from CCS Disability Action. We won't use the old-fashioned name, but use that. Yeah, right. The next one is my first day at school. And guess what? I got a doll and a little high chair as one of the gifts. But that's me going off to Manapapa School. Now my birthday is in June, so that's the winter uniform of Manapapa School. No, it wasn't actually uniform, but that's the way we dressed. Now I did have a brother, he was 7 years younger than me, and that's part of the middle photo there. And yes, you can see my funny legs. and I always leant forward. I was goggle-eyed, and you can see it's me in the middle there. And I've always stood forward until I had hip placements. And yeah, so moving on. And I deliberately show, I don't usually show my legs. If you find that people that know me, I always cover my legs up and my arms usually with trousers or skirts or things like that. And that's showing you that my arms and legs are really, yeah, well, they get me there, don't they? And there's a lovely photo of me in first year of teaching, and my classroom used to always be long frocks. My feet are really tiny. I get one pair of shoes a year from the orthotics department. They're totally amazing. My husband Alan always keeps my shoes clean for me so they last forever. These boots, actually, lovely boots that are, yes, it's great because I can never go off and buy shoes. Anyway, moving on. So, major influences. My mum and dad, Dad was very community minded. He was a JP and on lots of local boards, including CCS. Mum encouraged me to give everything a go, so I had a trike that I used to go to school. So by the time I was about standard 4, which I think That was about a year before. What year is that? Year 6, thank you. So that's when I took myself to school. I could never go on windy days, and I often was dropped off at school, but I loved being independent. And of course, Mum was there always. I got a licence relatively soon. I've had a lifetime of corrective surgeries, including this year, I had a hip replacement. And just as on the, what was it, the end of February, I had a hip replacement, and now my heels are more even and I'm standing up straight, so that's really good. I had a very loving family, and the power of women, the strength of women is something that has always influenced with me. My thesis was a successful woman born with disability. Is that halfway?
That's the halfway point.
Oh, okay. Right. Yes, okay. A personal journey. You're going to have a look at that one. Oops. Yep. I didn't work until I was 4 and a half. I was good at school. The first public exam that I did, I got extended time. And that was the very first person in New Zealand to do that. I knew I'd have to use my brain, so I began OT training. Moving on very quickly. Next one. Ages and stages. I had the first marriage, and there's my children. My son is an art teacher, and my daughter is a policewoman now. And I had a wonderful job as a program manager. I went all around New Zealand advocating the importance of sport and recreation for people with disabilities. Okay. Second life, I met Alan, and I became that's my husband now. And we've been married for 28 years, so that's lasted a reasonable time. And I was EO coordinator at the University of Waikato, and I put a text, Learners with Special Needs in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So 2 chapters. One was looking at history of disability, and the other one, the importance of sport and recreation. And I became a teaching fellow at the University of Waikato when we lived over in Hamilton. Okay, so back a bit. The other qualification, you can see those ones there. However, the one for the barrier-free access auditor, I still do a lot of access auditing for people here in the City Council, etc. Moving on. Thank you. I have represented New Zealand overseas, and I was attending a conference in Dubai, and that's when it's always difficult to get me onto something, but I enjoyed the ride. Okay. So I do lots of disability awareness workshops over the years, and that's for school students, that used to be tertiary students, scouts, guides, all sorts of different groups, as you can see up there. Challenging city councillors, and it was quite interesting. I put them in a wheelchair and professional face. It was quite interesting. So they came back at that time, it's a couple of years ago now, and they said we can't get into the accessible toilet, and I said, well, that's exactly what we're trying to point out, and they're a little bit better now. Universal design is a really important aspect of how we should go forward today. Right. So, that's just the compliance for the 412 building code, and it's really important that we refer to that now. And it's just little things like ramps and doors with handles, with lever handles, and a properly accessible building. You have your light switches and your door handles at the same level. Think about it. Not just for people with just physical disability, it's sight as well. Okay, so moving on. How are we going? In 2006, there were big years for the disability sector because they shut down places such as Kimberley. And the Convention on Rights of People with disability was adopted. And New Zealand had an awful lot to do in influencing the wording of that. It was quite interesting. Disabled Persons Assembly, of which I've been a member for many years, since 1983, they had a lot of impact in getting the wording right on that one. Okay, next, very quickly, back to my granddaughter in 2009, and I was awarded a New Year honour to do with disability. The disability sector. How are we going for time? 5 more minutes. Oh, lots of time. So, moving on. So, there's me, my bikes. I hated riding my bike to school. And when I grew up in Gisborne, they had lovely frosts. And I would bike to school as long as it wasn't windy, passing as many of the high school boys as I could, just so it made me feel better, different role. And I went to a school reunion. It was quite interesting. They started talking about, what happened to that girl? And I went, that girl's me. Oh! So it was quite funny. And they knew what I was doing too. It was quite funny. So it was good way. Okay, next. In 2017, I biked the Otago Rail Trail. So it's 152 kilometres, which is the same distance from here to Taupo. And I did it in 5 days, and I ended up, which is quite funny, with a blister on my bottom. Did you know you can get a blister on your bottom? It hurts. But it was interesting. I had the right padding and everything like that, but it just, it was fun. A real achievement in this Okay, community commitment today. Well, obviously, past year, the TAG, the Arthroporosis Group, we are also a charitable organisation, and that's the one that I'm vice chair. I'm a life member of Workbridge, was on the council for many years. I've been a Justice of the Peace for 24 years, and that's some time, and past president of the local council. At the moment, the Marlin Probus Group, I'm the chair of that. Wonderful as you get older, and all the wonderful trips that we go on. And I'm also on the local board of CAB. However, moving on, attitudes are still the biggest barrier. I wonder what's wrong with that physically inconvenienced chap and the frustration that happens. Okay, I have made my disability, yes, I've made it work for me. I've had a very full life. My son is an art teacher and a very, very skilled artist, and that's one of his paintings there. Below there.
It's a painting, not a photo.
A painting. He's very proud of my lad. My daughter's a policewoman, and she was a teacher. I have 4 grandchildren, and it's interesting that especially my granddaughter, my oldest, she has given speeches to different groups about advocacy and won speech competitions at school. She is right into especially advocacy, rights and others. I walk my talk. I often said when I was talking to trainee students and universities, I walk my talk. Areas not disability related. My skills are valued and respected for my unique perspective of life. I've made it work for me, and I think that's really important, because in my beginning, you wondered what you're going to do with that when you think about it like that. I attend the Next Step gym regularly, and we have right down the back. I'm sorry I've done it, I always do it. We've got lots of brochures for you all to go to, Jim. It's the most amazing place. Okay. The joys of my life. Here's my granddaughter, my oldest one, and her brother. Now, at the moment, Callum has left school, has challenges with language and all sorts of things like that. But right now, this very minute, he's working and talking with kiwi fruit. So, yes, it's interesting. It's very tough. My son's children, Finn up there is, I think he's 15 now, nearly 16, and my youngest granddaughter, Erin, and she's a very gifted artist. So, is that me? Today, today, we are the largest minority group in the world. People with disability, that's really quite interesting. Our rights and needs have influence and must be valued. Tying in so much to this presentation today, as people with disabilities, we just want to reach our full potential. And the last word, it's nice to be liked just the way you are. Thank you.
I'm just inspired. That was amazing. I didn't know 90% of that you've done and been through. That's amazing. Yeah, wow. That's pretty cool. And just Wendy, she says. Just Wendy. That's the fantastic thing I think about people, is regardless of what you're like or where you're from, we can do amazing things. And when we as a society make the mistake of valuing certain people below others, regardless of the reason, we lose something as a people or as a civilization. So we have wonderful people like Wendy who remind those of us who need it that you should never undervalue anyone, regardless of who they are or what they're doing. So next, we have a bit of a panel. So we're going to ask 6 representatives from different job agencies around to come up, and they will introduce themselves, and we can ask them very pointed and awkward questions. Be good fun. So can I please ask Chris Cooper, Linda Spark, David Crawford, Tanya Williams, and Katie Richardson, Chris Grunwell, and Anne Marie, who come on up and sit down.
Kia ora, I'm Chris. I work with Workbridge. I've been with them on and off for 20 years. Is that it? What about you?
What is Workbridge?
I have disabilities of my own, and I think that's what got me into the work I do. I love the work I do. Qualified in careers, and really enjoy taking someone who has no idea where they're going and actually getting them on a path more than into work. I'm a grandmother, a mother, a wife of many, many years. So I think I've lived a life.
I didn't know we were going to be also sharing our family as well. So, kia ora everyone, I'm Katie, Katie Richardson from Ministry of Social Development, otherwise known as Work and Income, otherwise known as WBoP.
Well, that's awkward.
But I'm here with Tanya Williams and Amelia Natai, and we are more on the work services side, so we're employment coordinators, so don't have anything to do with decisions around job seekers.
But never anything personal.
Yeah.
The system's broken, not the people.
So yeah, we are part of the work services team. There's 4 employment coordinators across Bay of Plenty, so the only one not here today is Lee White-Phillips. So we cover all of the service centres in the Western Bay, Eastern Bay of Plenty and Central. And we are now also part of the connected employment sites, which is why we've got those banners up there. There are 35 stood up nationwide, 3 in the Bay of Plenty, and they are connecting government agencies that do employment, education and training. And so for us as employment coordinators, where we fit into that is supporting individuals that have health conditions, illnesses or disabilities, I guess on their path or on their journey. And it's really cool because I guess for us, we've got more of a focus now more than ever to work in that space and really have ownership of it. So it's exciting. We also have great products that can be utilised to try and help get those opportunities and support people into work or into a pathway where there might be, I guess, hesitation around the cost of training and things like that. So things like our flexi wage and apprenticeship supports like Mana and Mahi, which you may have heard about. If not, come talk to us about it. Yeah, and I guess for us as well, events like this are really important to connect because we work alongside with WorkBridge, the likes of Enrich and everyone else to try and, I guess, achieve similar goals. But really, at the end of the day, everyone provides a little piece of the puzzle. So it's awesome to be here and kind of share that bit of the puzzle with all of you guys. So thank you.
No, she took all your time, so just kidding.
Well, I spit at the top. Hi, I'm Linda from Enrich Plus. Our vision is a life like any other, and it's about supporting our clients and being part of their dream, their plan or their goal, visioning a good life. Supported employment undoes barriers to employment, so we look at the client and we address those barriers and break them down. We also support our clients in work skills program that we have running, a book that I do. I have the opportunity to teach our clients what it is to be employed and what it's expected of them to be employed. Supporting people to live independently as well as part of Enrich's philosophy and physical, intellectual, sensual and mental health well-being until natural supports kick in, and then we let that take over and they can live independently as they can. We support them in coaching and training, and also the work skills program also addresses health and well-being, personal, mental, self-care, presentation, interviews, transport, funding, and exploring career options as well, and what is the local market like. We also have taken on a new contract within schools, transitioning from school to employment. And support is about reaching their milestones and ongoing support. So supported employment, value, a life like any other, is at the top of the list for us. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning. My name's Chris Cooper. I work for Habit Rehabilitation here in the Bay of Plenty. Just a bit about Habit. We're a rehabilitation company with working closely with the likes of ACC, MSD and also in the private sector. We're a multidisciplinary team, and so my role is a dual role. I'm the regional lead here, as well as I work as a vocational consultant. So part of the team is working with us. We have myself, we have psychologists, occupational therapists, physiotherapists, occupational health nurses and the likes. We've just recently taken on the supported employment contract in the Bay of Plenty, and myself, I'm quite new to the Bay of Plenty, having moved up here from Palmerston North, so these are great opportunities for me to sort of come out, get to know everyone, and be able to sort of network and everything else, and understand a bit more about who's out there in the wider Bay of Plenty area. It was interesting, we were talking about ACC before. I spent 20 years working for ACC, so I understand a lot about the disparities in terms of the funding and what people can get. So yeah, so if you've got time, more than welcome to come and talk to me.
Ko te mea tūtahi, e te atua o te ao huhiri o te ao marama, tēnā koe. No Ngāti Rākau ki te tonga me Ngāti Rangi Wewihi. And kia ora, my name is David Crawford. I just wanted to just first acknowledge where I come from. So on my mother's side I come from the Manawatu, Horowhenua area, Ngāti Raukawa iwi, and then from Rotorua, Ngāti Rangi Wewihi iwi from there. On my father's side, we come from the clans of Scotland, the Douglas and Crawford clans, and there's a bit of Irish in here as well. So I'm a product of my ancestors, and so that's a big reason why I'm here today. And I just want to also just acknowledge my grandfather and my grandmother, who was Reverend Lloyd Crawford, who was a reverend in the Baptist Church. So I thought it would be appropriate just to acknowledge them, because they're a big reason why I'm here today as well, and the influence that they've had on me and in my life. I probably also need to acknowledge Chris Manuel as well, because she's the big reason why I'm here. She was the one that poached me from Employee Z and brought me into Workbridge, and now I'm with Alpha Consultants as an employment consultant. And so Alpha Consultants is a company that was established here back in 1999, so we've been here 21 years. And we're now owned by, it's gone through a couple of different transitions of ownership. We're now owned by Marsh group of companies, which is an international operation dealing in risk management and insurance. We are the subsidiary for here in New Zealand, providing services, employment services for those that are needing various helps around advancing their career aspirations and even education aspirations and so forth. We also work closely with teams of people in the health professions as well. Kia ora.
Fantastic, okay. So, we have some time for some questions. Who would like to go first? I will make you ask a question. Somebody has an employment question. There we go.
I just want to find out, with all of you guys are doing a really amazing job, what about the people that with people with disabilities and the normal side of things? How can you see what you think is right for us as disability people? What can you guys see from that?
Our philosophy is to work alongside the clients individually, and we can see and plan and dream your goals out so that you can have a vision of what your aspirations are in your dream job, so your aspirations come true. It's breaking down those barriers is how we look at what's in the way, what's stopping you from doing what you want to do. And that's where our philosophy lies, is working alongside you, getting to know you and breaking down those barriers.
I had a job for myself in the community, and it was with a rest home, but I got redundant because of this COVID-19 as well. But it was really hard going. I used to have a job doing cleaning. and it was just taking over and just making it not easy for any one of us to go through this COVID-19. But
No.
because I had a job, they took me on, but next minute they gave me all my money back with everything. But I was lucky that I had that job in March. Since then, I have not been back and they have redone me.
There are other opportunities that you can explore, believe me. Come and see us and we can help. Along with work and income, we have the ability to either retrain you or we can look at your skills that you've got and transition them into a new role.
Yeah, I'd just say that yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, and I think a lot of people would also, empathise with that, and also the situation that COVID has kind of thrown everyone a bit of a curveball. But it's awesome that you've had that experience and that skill set and that knowledge, and that's something, no matter what happens with COVID, you've taken from that job. And those are the things that we find, I guess, when we're dealing with employers. It's not so much, not having the job right now or not being in something. It's, do you have the right attitude, and what are you bringing yourself into that next job that they're looking at? Yeah, definitely, like Linda was saying, happy to help. Really happy to just talk with you about what your skills are and what you're looking for, and how we can help get you towards the goal.
Workbridge can register you for a 12-month period and work with you and work alongside you. And we recognise a job as 5 hours. So we've got links with employers who are looking for people who work 5 hours plus. So, like Katie said, it's amazing you've got those skills and you'll have a reference, which is a huge thing when looking for work, and that's one of the biggest barriers we face with people, is trying to profile them without a reference.
I've got a reference.
Yes, that's awesome. So
I've had a lot of experience with things. I used to go to Avalon as well.
Yes, we have quite a few.
Myself.
We have quite a few people who come along with us, support workers, and we work together. And all of us, all the agencies could help you, so you have a great choice.
Brilliant. So,
Just one more thing. We also do reaching milestones within your job, training and coaching. So reaching those milestones up to 12 months, we can go ongoing support as well after those 12 months, which is making sure that natural supports kick in so that you identify that you can do the job and we're not going to leave you and set you up to fail. So we have that ongoing support after those 12 months to make sure that all of those natural supports are in and you're build your relationships, everything's going to be positive, for positive outcomes.
I had a good experience with a lot of ability for myself. I'm actually going through a lot, but I've been through a lot. So I do a lot of people with high needs that they need to speak up and have their own rights. And I love the organisations with anyone that works around here and help other people with disabilities as well as other things. In the community with CCS and SupportNet, I've been through Avalon stage, I've been through everything in the real world, and I know how disability is, and it's really, really, really good to see what you have experience of God. I love working with people with disability, and I always love to have my passion onto them. And it's great to have that say.
That's awesome. That's awesome hearing your story. And that's what needs to happen. You need to come out and express how you're feeling so other people are educated by that experience. Because as they said earlier, it was about attitudes, other people's attitudes, and that's what we need to educate people on, is their attitudes towards people with disabilities.
Brilliant. So do we have another question?
I'm just wondering.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, go.
Sorry. I was just wondering. Obviously, you're working with people with disabilities a lot, and how do employers see someone as a disability? I mean, are all employers open to employing someone with a disability, even though it might inconvenience them, or not? Is it just the few that you want to have somebody? Say, for instance, somebody can't work more than 3 hours a day because of their disability. You know how. What I mean is that some people are working 10 hours a day, some people are working 8 hours a day. So if they want to employ someone that can only do 3 hours a day, how limiting is that for the person to actually get the job once they've had all the help from people like you? But, you know, that's...
Unfortunately, people with disabilities are labelled with a disability. They've gone to the doctors and they've given them that label. And that label identifies the disability. But also we can work with people that have barriers to employment. So we look at those barriers, break down those barriers and work with what we have. Those skills are transitioned into a role, and normally 9 times out of 10 people do come with skills, even if it's washing dishes. So identifying the disability and the barriers to employment is what we are working with. And we don't diagnose, the doctors diagnose, so we're experienced, we've been well trained to identify and be discreet about the disability, and we don't look at the disability, we look at the skills that the clients have, and we work with those skills.
I'll just add on to that. Yes, dealing with a lot of employers, and no, there are a lot of employers out there that would be something they haven't thought about, because most employers, when they're thinking about a job or a need that they have in their business, they have an idea of the role, the tasks involved in it, and what those hours are. And normally they're thinking part-time is 20 to 25 hours, and a full-time job is anywhere from 30 up to 50 hours. So when you're going to an employer and they have an idea about their staff that currently do those set standard hours and those set tasks, it is challenging to try and change that picture, but I guess everyone on here is doing that every day, trying to chip away and say, hey, have you thought about this role actually being a job that could be done by someone that might do it for fewer hours and might only do a certain number of tasks but would do it really well and would stay with you. I guess that's the thing that we're trying to shift perspective on, is that roles aren't necessarily full-time all the time, and not everyone's going to be working 8 hours a day. Yeah.
But I'm just conscious of the time.
Yeah.
Sorry. So
just one example of working the hours, just a little bit, is tweaking, working with some employers that I've worked with in the past. We do have job share. So we give one client 4 hours and another client the other 4 hours, which is working really, really well in the kiwi fruit industry. And now that they're trying to make it a full-time role rather than just seasonal, by incorporating the kiwi fruit and the avocados, which is probably 10 to 11 months of the year, is a really good viable option for the clients to work with, because they can do that 4-hour shift, go home, get ready, have a good sleep, have a good feed, and come back for their shift. And then the other person does the either evening or afternoon shift. So it's working really well. Thank you.
Brilliant. Tony, you had your question?
Hi, hi. I was really interested in Chris and David's perspectives. A lot of the work, as we've just touched on here, for many of the people, they're never going to make it in a competitive environment where they've got to compete against other people, or 50 or 100 or 500 other employees, potential employees. And the focus has to be around how jobs are crafted to the needs of the people. From your organisation's point of view, because you're not necessarily just disability specific like some of these other ones, how do you see that? What sort of strategies do you guys use for that? Sort of crafting roles or helping employers craft jobs that actually fit the person instead of the person having to fit the roles all the time?
Yeah, I think that's a good question and a difficult question too, because I think that's always your aim is to locate those types of employers that are willing to actually look at things with a different sort of eye. And I think for me personally, I'll say being new in this area is with reaching out to some of these employers and accepting that you're going to get a lot of rejection at this point in time, and COVID doesn't help that. But I think it's just that perseverance in terms of how you go about it and in terms of how we're approaching it with some employers. And so I think it's understanding from the client what they're really interested in and where their strengths are, and then working with that employer. So there's one we're working with at the moment where the hours might not be what the normal hours are, but for a client in terms of what they're looking for, but the employer's willing to give it a go and actually bring it on board, like whether we're going to try like an unpaid work trial. So, there's no commitment, financial input from the employer. We can come and support that, from my perspective with myself and an OT coming in and just adapting that role a little bit to give the client an opportunity to show the employer what they can do and then start to build it from there. So that's one, but for every one there's probably about, I'll be honest with you, probably finding 25, 50 no's, no, we can't do this at the moment, health and safety, whatever it is. So yes, I guess it's getting those employees that are willing to put their hand and just give us an opportunity. And I think for me it's partly coming in, trying to, swap we can work around them without a cost to them at the first starting point.
So I'm a bit of a baby in this industry, just a heads up. But I thought of a couple of examples with a couple of clients that I worked with. So a couple of approaches. One is around helping the client to recognise their talent and their abilities and to strengthen their confidence in that, and then coaching them to bring more of that out of them. So with one client who I later found out had Asperger's, anxiety, depression, all those kinds of issues that he was dealing with, but had some real talent as well. Had a little bit of exposure to IT, had a qualification in IT, not degree level, but still a certificate, and was able to coach him on how to tap into his previous performing arts experience and put on a character in an interview situation, because he was quite terse a lot of the times and quite abrupt. So I had to coach him around how to present himself in a way that this employer would see potential. He had to go through 3 interviews. We had 3 different sessions and strategies for each interview, and he was able to secure a data analyst job. It was his first full-time job. So one way or one approach is around coaching and bringing that out in them in the best possible way. The other one is negotiating with an employer. So they have their, their idea of what they want from a potential employee for the job that they've advertised. And it's around, okay, well, tell me a bit more about what you expect to be done in this role, and then matching the person to that role and negotiating support, any adaptations around that. So I had that with one particular person who had some very severe anxiety, and was working in a job that was high pressure, had to work in a job that was required a lot of a lot of effort. So they put in place a plan for that particular employee, and that person was able to do really well in that job, and they kept giving that person more and more hours, which became a bit of an issue because then the anxiety levels started to get a bit higher. And so we just negotiate that. And then putting around the support systems in place as well. Sometimes it's working with family as well. So yeah, I hope that.
It's certainly a difficult question, isn't it, around what an employer expects. Coming from a business perspective, we're here to make money, or we're here to produce a product or achieve a goal, and how much they can adjust, not just around disability, but around any sort of accommodations or differences towards still achieving the goals of the business. And I think with COVID, businesses might be more open to adjusting, even just because they've had to all of a sudden. But it's a complicated question with no even hard answer. It's got potentially an impossible answer in some cases. It's curious.
So we work with, we have a strapline that says abilities equal employment, and we strongly focus on ability, not disability. All the skills are transferable skills that the person can use. Their disability doesn't actually come into play when they go to work, because they're going to work, they're buying skills, they're buying abilities. So we're trying to match people to employers who they want to work for. I do a lot around culture of workplace, where they want to go, what will it be like, what will it look like for you when you get there? How can you cope? I have many young men with Asperger's, and a lot of them go to Dungeons and Dragons. And I say to them, how do you get on there? And they love it. They get involved, they contribute, they're talked to, they listen to. I said, you need to make a workplace like that. You need to be able to be yourself. And it's about being yourself. And it's about selling a person for their abilities and their personality.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. I'm looking at the time, and I'm feeling the rumble in my tummy, and I just want to put feelers out. Do we want one more question, or do we want to go to lunch? Who votes lunch? Who votes one more question? Who doesn't vote at all? Voting is a right, people. If you don't do it, you have no opportunity to complain. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Let's have funding and then we can go to lunch.
Yeah, just wanted to address the funding that's accessible at the moment post-COVID. There is a lot of funding that you can access to retrain, upskill, and working income would know those.
I love it. I guess there's always been that pot of money, but it's working out how to creatively use that pot of money. And we do have access to wage subsidies and support for employment, which is awesome. There is still work needed in that space. There are requirements around hours, which isn't always, within everyone's range. So for flexi-wage, that's a wage subsidy we pay to employers to offer an opportunity for someone, and it's to support them while they're training them and getting them up to speed in a role. And throughout that time, we're providing that support while they're in the role as well, and checking in and make sure they're achieving, what the employer expects, but also what that individual is hoping to get out of that training part of being in a new role. But with that, we do have requirements around a minimum number of hours offered, which isn't always, accessible for everyone. And that is our limitation with funding sometimes. But the more cases we get as examples of areas where we can be flexible with using that money is awesome, or suggestions or ideas. Not that we can always make it happen, but we can try. And then, yeah, we do have, I guess, Mana Mahi, which I mentioned before, is our apprenticeship support fund. And that can be for part-time work as well as full-time. It's often promoted, even through government talking about it as full-time training opportunities, where someone can get, learn on the job as they go, and the employer can get funding for that. But it's also part-time as well. So yeah, there is options, and like I said, there are those connected sites which are walk-ins if you wanted to talk employment, educational training, or if you had a job opportunity or wanted to see if an employer was more tempted by having some sort of funding to help them take you on. The main connected site for here is Mount Omanui, which is 9 Owens Place, and you can walk in anytime and talk to us. So hopefully that helps.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming up and talking to us. How long is it going to take, Gareth?
1 minute.
1
minute. I just wanted to make a plug for the employment support qualification I mentioned earlier. Seriously consider it. It has a particular focus on a range of technical skills and customised approaches that will get even people with the most significant barriers into employment. So highly customised. Tony talked about crafting proposals. Recruitment and interview program, job recruitment processes are by and large incredibly discriminatory. A highly customised approach simply ignores them and skirts around it. And the content in that qualification goes into a lot of detail about how employment consultants can do that and work, not how the two can be brought together. So give it some thought. Thanks.
Thanks, Gareth. So brilliant. Again, thank you very much for taking your time. I have the vague impression that we should have an entire seminar dedicated to being able to talk to you guys, and Katie's just sitting there going, please don't. All right. You can get off the stage now. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. As always, I have had a lot of fun. I hope you have as well. On behalf of the Trust, I'd like to thank you all for making the time to come here and hear our amazing speakers and the questions we had for our panel. Thank you very much. We want to do that as well. We're still doing, yeah. So I'll do my bit, and then we will have Christine Jones finish us off, I think. So we have lunch available for you at the back. Now, in order to receive lunch, you have to fill out a feedback form. If you don't, I will take the food off of you. And nobody wants to have you do that, so please fill out the form. So Christine Jones, if you want to come up, and give us quick info. Christine is from Wilson Home Trust, and just come all the way down from Auckland coming to you for this. Yeah, so.
I won't talk for long because I know there's probably lots of hungry people around, so I know that you're all dying to eat. So yeah, my name's Christine Jones from the Wilson Home Trust, and thank you, Wendy. I think I had a little plug, didn't I, from Wendy about the Wilson Home Trust. So just to give you a little bit of a background about what we do, we support physically disabled children, actually from Turangi to the top of the North Island. Thankfully from the Wilson family, the beautiful site in Takapuna was donated as a trust, and as historically the area that it covered was actually from Turangi to the top of the North Island. So hence why I'm in the bed plenty for the last couple of days. So just to let you know that we do have a grant scheme for children up to the age of 22 who, as I say, who qualify with a physical disability. And we have a range of grants which cover equipment and activities, holidays, emergencies, and also wellbeing and counselling grants. So we have a lot more information about those grants on our website. I won't go into too much detail because, as I say, I might start talking and I might not stop. So, as I say, I've got a few brochures which I'll pop up on the way out for you, anybody who wants to grab them. So if anybody knows any families in the area that would benefit from having a grant. We like to think we provide that little bit of magic to some of our families, and we have great stories. So yeah, thanks for taking that couple of minutes and enjoy your lunch. Thanks.
Feedback form first.